Take all your chances while you can. Never know when they'll pass you by. Like a sum the mathematician cannot solve. Like me, trying my hardest to explain.
Hello and welcome to my Doctor Who Series 5 review. If you're interested in watching any of the other series reviews from my Doctor Who marathon, click up in the corner now and there'll be a link to every single one of them, all put in a playlist especially for you. So, the 11th hour. I like how there's a very different tone to it. You can tell that it's a very different era compared to the End of Time and the rest of the specials. I like the scene where the Doctor's trying to try out his taste buds, even though it's quite silly, it can get away with it because he's having a post-regeneration crisis. I loved all the classic shots of the Doctors and the monsters, when the Atraxi is sort of showing the Doctor, and then when the Doctor steps through it, it's so badass, it worked really well. I'm not too keen on the new TARDIS. I don't like the copper vibe you get from it, and the fact that it's all looks like it's been made himself, and I don't really like it. I prefer it when the TARDIS looks mechanical as opposed to that you just put it together out of something from a junkyard. This is easily the best series opener of the new series, without a doubt. The Beast Below. Starship UK is a really sort of interesting idea, and I like the way they tied it in with the solar flares, which were obviously mentioned during season 12 of the classic series. The Doctor saying he's always tried to stay out of trouble reminds me of the War Games part 10, I think, or I think it's part 10. Where the Doctor's saying to Jamie that he's always staying out of trouble. I feel like it's slightly too political, saying that the government have a sort of hidden agenda. It was alright, but it just felt quite political, like I said. I loved how rebellious the Doctor was throughout pretty much the whole story. Surely when the Doctor and Amy were on that whale's tongue, however you say it, surely they would have suffocated, because I mean, its teeth it isn't exactly holding air and stuff in for them to breathe, is it? I don't quite understand how that worked. Liz 10 I just found annoying as fuck, to be honest. As interesting as the story was, it was just executed so badly, and it's another one of those where if they did it well, it could have got away with it. The story was actually alright, it's just the execution that ruined it. Victory of the Daleks. Now, it started off really well. It was a great idea. There was some nice callbacks to Series 4 and the rest of the Dalek story from the Russell T Davies era. Matt Smith put on an absolutely fabulous performance. God, that sounds camp as fuck saying fabulous. But as the story goes further and further in, it starts to get sillier and sillier. The whole Jammy Dodger thing was quite stupid. I know it was meant to be funny, but it really sort of wasn't. The new Daleks look really awful. The Teletubby-ness of them and the fact that they're so big, it ruined the Daleks, I think. It's just a shame how it got towards the end. If it was as good as it was towards the start felt quite serious. The Doctor felt, you could see the anger in the Doctor when he saw the Daleks, and if it stayed as serious as that for the whole story, it could have been a really good one, but the fact that it started to get really silly towards the end really kind of ruined it, I think. The Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone. It's a really, really, really good story. River is already a bit too big for her boots by this point already. The whole sequence with the recording of the angel was really sort of suspenseful, and it worked really well. It really sort of kept you on the edge of your seat, and that's something the story does really well for the whole thing. It keeps the audience on the edge of the seat for the whole story, for both parts of it as well. At the end of part 1, when the Doctor has that little speech and he shoots the gun, it's really badass and I really like that. The way the angels got into Amy's mind was really, really creepy. Doctor owes Casanova a chicken. Why? I love the Doctor's ID card, or his library card, with the first Doctor's face on it. It really feels like they're trying to shove a lot of classic references in this series. 1 minute, I need to sneeze. Sorry if I sound really weird, by the way. Rory makes a really good point to the Doctor about how he makes people dangerous to themselves because they try and impress him. And I think that's a really, really good point, and it obviously made the Doctor think for about the best part of 5 seconds, I know, but still. I love the way Matt Smith portrayed a much more serious 11th Doctor for the majority of the story. Obviously Rory made a "your mum" joke before they were even funny. I think that was quite well funny. There just happened to be a switch that turned the whole of the Saturnine's system off. Just one switch, that's all it took. Very convenient. I still don't understand the ending with the silence and the cracks and everything at the end of that story. I know that obviously all gets explained later on in the series, but in that story specifically, everyone disappearing or whatever in those final few seconds, what was that all about? I have absolutely no idea. Amy's choice. I feel like it was a really good story, it was executed really well, but I just found it boring personally. Like, it had the potential, it fulfilled the potential, but it just wasn't my sort of thing. I didn't really enjoy it as much as I probably could have done. I liked how quirky everything was. I don't know if that's the right word, that's just the word that sort of got stuck in my mind when I was watching it. But with Rory's ponytail, got no idea why he even grew that in the first place. The whole invasion of the pensioners sort of thing, it was just very quirky, I think, in general. There was such a big emphasis put on who the Dream Lord actually was, to the point where when you find out that it's actually just like a dark version of the Doctor at the end, you're sort of a little bit disappointed. It didn't really live up to the expectations that were created when they were putting such big emphasis on who he really was. Don't know why Rory just randomly decided to cut his ponytail off while he was, about to die or whatever. It had no impact on the story or the scene whatsoever. It was just so random, it wasn't needed at all. Like I said, it was an alright story, I just didn't enjoy it as much as I probably should have done myself personally. The Hungry Earth / Cold Blood. The plot was almost identical to the Silurians, but I feel like it was done better than that. I think the Silurians, I know I'm going a bit off track here, but the Silurians in season 7 was good, but it dragged on for far too long, and I feel like it could have been done much better. This was it being done much better, I think. I love the bond the Doctor had with Elliot. The way the Doctor made Elliot feel better about his dyslexia, I think really sums up the 11th Doctor in general. I'm not amazingly fond of the new Silurian design. I would have preferred them to keep the classic design, to be honest. It looks much better. The set design was absolutely phenomenal. Everything Ambrose did just got right under my skin, and I just couldn't stand the character at all. The ending was very quick, it felt really rushed, and obviously Rory's death later on gets made irrelevant by the events of the finale, but obviously I'll get to that in a minute. Vincent and the Doctor. I think it was really cool how they brought a lot of Van Gogh's paintings into real life, with the cafe, the bedroom. It worked really well, it looked really, really cool. The actual story was quite rubbish, the whole thing with the Creface was quite stupid, but the way they portrayed depression in this story and the way they portrayed the tragedy of Van Gogh's life was absolutely stellar. It worked so well. The fact that the story is quite shit is nothing compared to how good that portrayal was, and that's really what puts it high in my episode rankings. Whoever played Vincent put on an absolutely fantastic performance. Again, he really helped that portrayal, like I was just talking about. I think right at the end, when the Doctor takes Van Gogh to see sort of modern day and see how he's remembered in 2010, the choice of music they had by Athlete was really good and it really fit the tone. Obviously it was really emotional, just the fact that they didn't make Depression just out to be, oh, he's a bit sad. They showed that it was so much more than that. The Lodger. Craig and Sophie were living in some sort of really stupid, unrealistic and fucking cringy dream world. It just really sort of wound me up how perfect their little lives were. It had the potential to be a good story. Again, it's just like The Beast Below. It had the potential, but it just didn't come close to fulfilling it. The football scene is a guilty pleasure of mine. I don't really like football personally, like I'll watch it if England are on or whatever. But football's not a big thing for me, but that scene is just one of my guilty pleasures for some reason. I don't know why I like it. The ending was absolutely ridiculous. They defeated the villain or villains with love again, and I hate it when they do that in the new series, especially in Moffat's time as showrunner. The house after the ship had gone was so clearly fake. Why didn't they just get a house that was sort of on its own? Because it just looks awful and unrealistic and it just didn't work at all. The whole story's just shit, basically. The Pandorica opens the Big Bang. Obviously this is the finale. I liked how at the start of the Pandorica opens we go back and we revisit a lot of the characters that we'd seen earlier in the series, like in The Beast Below, like in Victory of the Daleks and Vincent and the Doctor. I really like that. It really sort of brought the whole series full circle, which I like. How did that Cyberman function without a brain? When its whole skull fell out, it still functioned, and I don't understand how that worked. Rory coming back was a massive cop-out, I think, and that really sort of brought down my opinion on the story as a whole down by quite a lot. That speech was quite badass, but it's made out by most of the Doctor Who fans nowadays that it's like the best speech he's ever done. And it's not, it's alright, it's quite badass, but it doesn't sum up really anything, to be honest. It was obviously him just trying to get a bit more time to sort shit out. I don't really think it's very believable that the Daleks would form an alliance with any other creature, let alone every other creature that the Doctor has ever faced in his life. I don't believe that at all. I know they've had alliances with the Master before, but that wasn't... They were obviously just going to do him over in the end, and it's obvious that they weren't going to do the rest of the alliance over, which really sort of bothered me. It wasn't in character for the Daleks at all. The thread that they laid out for the Big Bang was really interesting, and I think the way they got out of it was really clever as well. I like how the opening of the Big Bang mirrors the opening of the 11th Hour. It's another one of those things where it really makes the series feel full circle. I think the timey-wimey bits were very cleverly written throughout the whole of the Big Bang. The rewind was kind of emotional. I saw, when I was first watching Flesh and Stone, obviously not this time, when I first watched it when it aired when I was about 10, I did notice that he had his jacket on. Obviously I didn't know what was going to happen, but I did see that coming a mile off. One other thing that bothers me about this story, other than the fact that they copped out with Rora's death, was the fact that right at the end, Amy just brings the Doctor back just because she can think about him a lot. And it just makes no sense. I know they've probably got some bigger explanation for it, but it's not enough. It's a load of rubbish, I think, the fact that she brought him back like that. But it doesn't completely spoil the rest of the story. It's very cleverly written, and you've got to give that to Stephen Moffat for writing it so cleverly. But yeah, that's it. That's the season, or that's the series in a nutshell. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a like. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new. Follow my social medias, and I'll see you next time. No!